All right, in this video we're going to go into a little bit more detail and we're going to talk about the job-specific forms. So when you're inside the job, and again these forms will be available even once a job is complete like this one. So we already went through kind of all of the job process, workflow, clicking through the buttons. But this is going to essentially be the action items that you need to do while on site. So for instance, this clinic, which is Pittsburgh PT at 1000 Liberty Avenue, you'll be able to go into the job products/assets form. And in this form, you'll see an area to add products and an area to add assets. So the asset portion is the most important piece. Now, when you hit the red, or the green button, that will show you a list of all the current assets that are allocated to Pittsburgh PT. And you can see there's a long list because of all the different trials and errors that I've done. This is, definitely a dummy account. And basically, what the process is going to be, if you are on site to fix the Apple iPhone 8 with serial number 1234, you will click on that asset and you'll see all of the asset information. Now this is all the information that we have on that asset that is already in the system. You can see the asset photo at the bottom, and you can go ahead and click Add in the top right. Sorry. Oh, the status field is required, so you can click Add. And now you see all of the assets that are a part of this job, specifically this job, will show up here. Now, if for some reason the asset that you're working on is not in this list, so for instance, if it's the first time we're going to this clinic, this list will be empty. If for some reason the only service that we've ever done at this clinic was on a treadmill and you're there to fix an elliptical, likely you're not going to see that asset as part of this account. So what you need to do in that situation, you want to make sure you save when you go back, but what you're going to want to do in that situation is go to the second form here, which is called Create Asset. Now, when you click that, you get a handful of options, fields that are needed to be filled out. So you'll want to go ahead, fill out the information that you have on that asset. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this information. And this is assuming that you have this information, all this information for that particular asset that you're working on. So this is other, because it's actually a calculator, which I will show you. Now the asset status is important because if the asset passes and there's no issues, you're going to want to check healthy. But if, as you're working on that asset, you see that it needs some sort of service and no parts necessary, it needs parts or it needs a replacement quote, you're going to have to change the asset status. So generally speaking, if it needs service and no parts are necessary, you guys are going to just complete that service while on site and go ahead and fix that. So generally speaking, this needs service, no parts necessary will not be used often. The only time that it might need to be used is if you are there and say the clinic closes in 20 minutes and you don't have time to perform that service and you need to go back out to fix that, you will click Need Service, No Parts Necessary. But if, for instance, a particular part is needed, you will check the asset status as Needs Parts. So for this instance, we're just going to categorize it as healthy. Last service on, and it will come up as today's date. the condition is basically just on a sliding scale of 1 through 5. I'm going to say this is fair condition. And this is where you basically click the type of service that is happening with that piece. So if that piece needs a safety inspection and a calibration, then you will check both of those pieces. So with that being said, you'll go through kind of your tests. Leakage current, say, is 235. Ground resistance is, say, 67. And it passes. Now, for calibration measurements, if, say, an additional calibration measurement is needed, this is where you can add these different expected values. So, for instance, if you're checking an ultrasound or an e-stim and the expected output is 20 volts, and you go ahead and measure it and you get 21 volts. You can do this as many times as you like. So if the next is 30 volts and the expected output is 32 volts, that's good. It falls within the 20%, which is categorized there in those parentheses. And then you can add a quick service note. Unit performed well, passes inspection. Now, this would be the area that you can add asset-specific information. So if a particular part is needed, or if a unit failed due to a particular test, you can outline that. And basically just add any information that you and the clinic, so this service note will show up on the field service report, so keep that in mind. Specific to that asset. So and then before that, you're going to want to take a photo, and you can only add one photo for each asset. So this photo isn't necessarily supposed to be part specific, or if something is broken, it's not necessarily supposed to be anything other than just like a holistic view of that particular asset. And you'll see it looks like the application crashed. So let's see how much of that was saved. Probably none. Yeah. All right, let's take the photo first and make sure that that photo gets added properly. Okay, so it's actually good that this happened on this video, because like all technology, it's not without issues. So if that happens, just kind of bear with it, log out. Sometimes it will fix itself, but sometimes you have to get out of the application and start over, which is not the best. But the nice thing about it is once it's saved and it shows it as being saved, that will not go away. So let's just put one calibration measurement. And I'm going to go ahead and save. Now, generally speaking, see the little spinning wheel on the bottom there? That means that it's been uploaded, but generally speaking, what I like to do is I like to pull down after each asset that I add, and then I can go straight into the job products. And find that asset. And usually the last asset gets added at the bottom. So I didn't see it there, so I'm going to kind of recharge that again. And we're going to go ahead and add that asset. Texas Instruments TI 179-6789. And that is the asset that we just added. And you can actually view the asset photo by clicking that link down at the bottom. And that's the picture that we just added. You can delete that photo and add a new one by clicking the trash can there. But we're just going to go ahead and add it and then save. So if you're on site to do an annual inspection, you should anticipate seeing all of the assets that you worked on in this asset list. And that can be quite lengthy, but take your time. Once it's inputted once, you don't really have to do much more after that. The last form that I'll talk to you about here is the accounts notes form. And this is where you can review the annual inspection date. So for instance, the annual inspection date for Pittsburgh PT is January 6th, which is kind of in line with where we are today. Today is actually January 12th, I think. 17th. Yeah. So you can click done, change that, and then if any piece of equipment is new piece of equipment is requested. So if you're on site and the clinic says, hey, I need a new quote for a treadmill, you'll do yes and say CM is requesting new quote for treadmill. Please send quote to CM. Period. Good. And you can save that there. Now keep in mind the annual inspection date is not necessarily the same as the preventative maintenance date. So the annual inspection date is the once a year annual inspection that we do, electrical safety and calibration. Now some clinics want us to come twice a year and do preventative maintenance. So if this clinic is on board with preventative maintenance, then that date will likely be sometime in, say, July, because that would be the 6 months from January 17th. So you can go ahead and edit that. Again, things that I like to do before kind of closing out the job is just check your job products and assets and make sure that all the assets that you worked on are in the asset list. And under products, you can actually add line items. So this Pittsburgh PT looks like it has the price book for her, which is one of the companies that we do installs for. So you'll really only see items that are associated with that account. So what you can do is you can say, all right, we roughly traveled for 3 hours. You can add that. You can say we installed 3 units. You can add that, and we installed one HER compressor. And you can click save. Now all that information will be saved on this job, and the back office will be able to properly invoice for that. So that is a very quick tutorial for using Skedulo to create new assets and to add customer assets to a particular job.